Probably gonna be a lot of background noise. And then again, I live near a highway. What do you do? So of course, if you can't get the car, you got the couch. If you don't get the couch, well, there's always tomorrow morning. I wanted to get my thoughts of this movie off my mind while I had the chance, while it's still fresh in my brain before I do any blog writing or anything. So as always, it's just a matter of getting my thoughts out there while I still have this film fresh in my mind to talk about. That ordeal. So yeah, I went to see this one on a Thursday evening. If you can't see it, it's Finding Dory. Sorry, I thought that was a street sweep for a second there. So I remember in the, when I was doing the Jungle Book vlog, there was a street sweeper that passed by, and it was so beautiful. One of the most rarest things to see in that kind of circumstance. But no, this was Finding Dory, a sequel to Pixar's Finding Nemo. And as always, I lower my expectations whenever it comes to a Pixar film, especially a sequel, because I really think there's only so far Pixar can go with their movies. Like, if you remember back when I was talking about The Good Dinosaur and Inside Out, this will probably be like a bit of a repeating thing, but I'll just put it plain and simple. I felt the bar was raised so much with Up that I felt there's no way they could handle or top it at all. A film of human emotion, so many things to connect with. And then of course the year after we had like lame sequel after lame sequel, concepts that were okay but not, great by any means. Inside Out was considered the turning point, that maybe they're getting back on track, which I hope they are. And then The Good Dinosaur happened, and that was sort of a big train wreck. I shouldn't be too hard on that movie. People actually like that one. And again, those who do like it. But if you like it, that's fine. I won't judge you. It's just when you have a movie where the background is more interesting than the characters and story, there's problems. But when they were doing a sequel for Finding Dory, I really couldn't see how they were able to get that off the ground. But then they had the whole concept and idea that, it's just a finding family sort of story, and I kind of figured, okay, if they're going to do that, might as well just call them the first movie, which I did rewatch last night, and I'm safe to say the first one still holds up. There's definitely some good spots in Finding Nemo that are great. There's a lot of emotion, a lot of humor. I really don't have that many gripes with Finding Nemo at all. It's just a good movie. I wouldn't put it as high as some of the others, like WALL-E, Toy Story, and, again, Up, or Inside Out for that matter. But Finding Nemo, it's a nice little film about the self-discovery of, who you are and where you belong. Because that whole set, because of the whole movie, Marlon is pretty much afraid of his surroundings and the ocean and everything, and thinks, this is how my son should live, just being, nice and safe. And then he later learns that even though the ocean environment that he's in is dangerous, it's still a nice little place to be in. And watching it again, that is actually a pretty nice message, and it does connect with today's surroundings. The fact that, there are some dangerous places that we go to, but there is something beautiful and nice when you're there. I think the biggest turning point is midway when they meet the turtles, and Crush explains the whole life cycle, that the kids are hatched and they're left alone. It's the kids, the kid turtles' choice to go back into the ocean and find them. So you really think about it, that's actually pretty tough, because it shows to Marlon that, everywhere is sort of different, and everyone else has it different, whether it be simplistic or difficult. So that's fine, that's all great. Dory's memorable, and that's the reason why we got this one, because Ellen DeGeneres did such a good job playing a humorous character with short-term memory loss. And after seeing this movie, I'm starting to second think the first film now, more than ever. Not too hard though, just in certain ways. Without spoiling too much, I'm just going to go with the basic facts and say that while it's not a necessary sequel, it's one that I can safely say is actually worth checking out. If you liked the first movie, or, you know, if you liked Dory for that matter, that's pretty much the only reason I can, you know, fully recommend it. In terms as a standalone movie on its own, it's a good picture. It is. There's some stuff I do like about it. There's definitely some things there that I think are, you know, interesting and neat, but it's a little flawed in spots. But just for what it is, I can safely say this is a good summer movie compared to some of the stuff I've seen lately, like Warcraft and Alice the Looking Glass. And while those two are not terrible movies, they're not ones I can just sort of safely recommend. They're ones that are more like, oh, this is sort of a rental, you know, it's not worth seeing in theaters. Oh, this is just so bad it's good. It's not really the qualifications of a summer blockbuster at all. Finding Dory is probably the first true summer movie I can easily recommend off the tip of a hat since Captain America Civil War. That, well, I wouldn't really put it too hard. I wouldn't really put it too high with Civil War. This is a family movie we're talking about. So the whole thesis of the movie is that you have Dory going through and she's starting to remember certain things about her past and figuring out that she actually has a family, and she goes to great lengths to try and find her folks. And right off the fly, it does sound like it's rehashing things from the first movie, which at first it does, and even later on when they do different things, it does feel like in spots that they're retreading a couple things from the movie. There's like the turtles, the EAC, the East Australian Coast sequence, but even that's like, I think, just a minute. And they do that fine. That's at least a good excuse of a cameo to get the plot going, so it's forgivable. Marlon being Marlon as always. There's like one scene that nearly made me go against him, and then like later on without the movie, they kind of did this little epiphany bit, which was a little forgivable to say the least. And I'm gonna be honest, I never actually pictured Marlon as being that big of a jerk in the first film. The fact that he's so harsh, well, he's not really too harsh, he's very overprotective of his kid in the first film. And at least with here, he's a little more evolved, but there's still that sense of worry and doubt. Which is a shame, because in the first movie he sort of learns how to cope with his life and his environment and everything around it, and just to be a good father. And here, there isn't really much of a reason for him to be overprotective. It's a little bit of a nitpick, and I guess it's like, oh, you gotta have a reason for this character to sort of act this way kind of thing. Like, they could have at least made him a little more adventurous, but there's points where that is sort of forgiven, in a sense. Especially when they play around with like the marine aquarium hospital that they go through in the last 2/3 of the movie. So the first half pretty much retreads a good bulk of the film, even going as far as nearly, and I'm going to say nearly copying the scene where in the first film they're in that big black abyss. There's that little fish. I think it's called an anglerfish. It's like a little dangling light or something. Instead it's with a giant squid, because why not? But then about after all of that, we get into the newer material, and it's pretty much, in a nutshell, the dentist sequences with the tank gang and everything. Only it's a little more expanded and it's a bit more interesting, because at least they're playing around with the idea of how a giant aquarium would be like from the point of view of a fish from the ocean, and just exploring these different tanks and everything. And the fact that there's all these different places, all these different variety of creatures to visit, it does give an open opportunity for a character to explore more marine life. That I was good with. I was definitely intrigued with that, even though some of them are like little passing glances and stuff. The main thing of this movie is, you know, finding the Dory's parents. There is a satisfactory beginning, middle, and end. The ending is something to be desired, but I don't want to give too much away to that one. But I think in a nutshell, this is definitely a sequel where it almost falls into the traps of previous movies, like, say, Ghostbusters 2, where it retreads a couple of things, but at least it throws in some creative stuff, some new things to at least keep it nice and fresh. It is going to be pretty debated as to whether it's an original sequel and stuff. But I think for me personally, this is definitely a Pixar sequel I can find myself watching. And I know this is going to sound a little blasphemous. I kind of liked it a little better than Toy Story 2 and 3. And don't get me wrong, I like Toy Story 2 and 3, but not as much as the first one. I liked the idea that they went bigger into the world of toys and Buzz and Woody and where they stand in terms of nostalgia and memorabilia and what happens when a kid gets older and has to get rid of his toys. Those are fine ideas, but it's like, do we really need to go through and see all those sort of things? Probably not. The first film's fine on its own, but as far as sequels go, they definitely improve as they are. And I think with Finding Dory, they do play around with a lot more capabilities with the aquariums. Again, we're dealing with like different marine animals here and there. We have like seals, and whales, belugas. There's this giant tank full of fish and everything. And in a sense, I sort of felt like I wish there was a little more playing around with that. Like maybe have like a little more here and there, like, you know, Predators of the Deep or something. But it's supposed to be a hospital for sick marine animals, so it's like, okay, we're not going to expect anything drastic like sharks, so that's a bummer. But just that whole 2/3 of the movie we're in this, you know, giant aquarium, it is interesting to see how it is from the perspective of the fish. Like, you know, how would it feel like if you're being poked and prodded in this little, you know, kitty area, you're getting touched around and stuff. But like I said, it does retread a couple of things from the first movie, but at least not enough to be, like, blatantly obvious. So it's pretty passable. There's definitely some new characters. There's definitely some really new stuff that's actually really good. The biggest one that I think people are going to be talking about is the octopus Hank, who has, you know, a broken tentacle. So he's like a seven puss or cyan puss. I'm trying to remember how it's pronounced from Dory. Technically, he has 7 tentacles instead of 8. So there's a little joke that's nice. And I think what works the best about this character is that, one, it's being played by Ed O'Neill from Modern Family, and he has like this very Grinch, Oscar the Grouch personality added to it. The fact that he only cares about himself and he's sort of fighting for his own, and the fact that he's sort of this mischievous octopus that's trying to escape from this place that's helping him out, which is pretty funny because a few weeks before the movie premiered, there actually was an escape from an octopus in an Australian aquarium. So there's some eerie abilities there, but I don't think that octopus would do the things that Hank did in this film. And what I really liked is how, you know, he plays off of Dory for a bit, realizing that, yeah, Dory does have a problem, and in a way he sort of respects that, but not to the point where he has like a complete change of heart and is like, oh, you know, woe is me, what was I thinking? I like how he sort of remains as he is, with this very, you know, grumpy personality. It's kind of like Grumpy from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's something that, it's a quirk he's stuck with, he doesn't change from it. He has a little bit of a soft spot, but at the same time, he's sort of sticking to his own bystanders, which I find very fun. And the animation on this thing is really remarkable. He moves like an actual octopus, he can camouflage and change colors, and you can tell the animators are having a lot of fun trying to figure out, okay, what if he's, you know, behind this wall and stuff, and there's this plant or anything, how do you merge into that? You turn like an actual plant or something, which gives for a lot of creativity, but I don't think an octopus would really go that far. It's like a super octopus. It's like Octopus Man from Rick and Morty, only less violent. So my God, whenever that octopus is on screen, I was just bawling. I was like legitimately cracking up. because this is a very animated character. Like, even though he has like this very he has this very pessimistic attitude, but just the way they animate it is very Chuck Jones, like the way he moves around and swings on the rafters and everything. It must have been a big challenge for Pixar to do that. I can clearly see where the $2 million went into making this movie, especially when you consider the water effects and everything. But in terms of the Dory character, they really make her the center of this movie, and I think if it wasn't for that, it probably, again, would have been a bigger retread of the first film. And having her in the middle of the film as the centerpiece of the whole movie really helps. Because coming off of the first film, I sort of want to look back at it again and see more clues and more hints that they left behind with some of Dory's lines in Finding Nemo, like, oh, I have short-term memory loss. It runs my family. Oh, where are they? That way that she ponders, thinking about her family for a second, and then just jumping back to Marlin. It's weird because after seeing the sequel, there's like bits and pieces of the first movie that's starting to come back, and it's not reminding me that the original's better. It's reminding me that maybe there's a lot more of this character than we thought of. In the first film, she was sort of like this comic relief sidekick kind of character. And I think here, instead of Cars 2, which, by God, I'm not going to see in full at any time soon. Trust me, there's no way you can force me to do it. In terms of what they did to Dory with this one, they expand more into the character, and some of the little breadcrumbs and clues that they sort of hinted at in the first film and expanded upon, or if it was unintentional, then maybe it was unintentional. They said, okay, where can we pick up and expand on this thing? The stuff they do with the character in this movie is so interesting that it becomes less about discovering missing folks and more about discovering you. And this is what I think that's actually pretty interesting about this film Pixar did that sets itself in the other ones. It's legitimately about a movie that deals with living with disability and trying to cope with that. And I can really connect with that. As a kid, I had problems remembering things. I had problems, remembering like certain pronunciations, all that sort of stuff. And I remember going through these classes and therapy sessions just to, keep on reminding myself, these little tricks on remembering things and, how to read things, all that sort of stuff. And I think with this movie, it definitely connected a lot with that material, because here we have Dory, who is trying her hardest to actually achieve this goal, but the only thing holding her back is really herself, and this problem that she has is, and so she has to remember all these little clues and things that she did as a kid to try and jog her memory, which I think is actually pretty clever, and the way they execute it is very, I don't want to say Agatha Christie mystery-like, that's a little far-fetched, but in sort of like a mystery sort of way where there are some hints and clues here and there that they leave the audience to even figure out for themselves how this resonates, how this connects, all sort of stuff. So in terms of continuity-wise and connecting to the first movie, it works pretty well. And I think as a standalone movie, it does fine. Like, they do drop things and remind viewers, like, oh, this happened in the first movie, I gotta remind this sort of thing. So I think for a sequel, with a character like this, I think they did a pretty good job really executing it. The only nitpicks I do have... Hold on a second. If there were a few things I did nitpick about this movie, they're just very, very minor things. Like the fact that I have to keep reminding how it connects with the first film in a sense, which is, again, pretty minor. But there is one thing that does bug me just a little bit. I did read up on an article that they actually had to revise this movie a bit after seeing a documentary on aquarium life, to at least give certain characters a chance to go back in the ocean and stuff, because it is a marine aquarium. And I guess to remind us of that, constantly got the whole movie of this little voiceover saying, don't worry, these fish are here to be rescued, treated, and when they're better, they're going to be released back in the ocean. And a little bit of a nitpick, they do that constantly in certain spots of the movie, and it's fine you do it once, it's okay if you do it twice, but you do it like more than like 3 times or 4 times, you're really nailing it in that, you know, don't worry about these characters, they're gonna be safe. We know they're gonna be safe. They're gonna be fine. There's like no necessary reason to keep telling us, like once, twice, it's okay, but more than like 3 or 4 times, that's nailing it in a little too much. The only respect I have that gives it a little humor to it is the fact that Sigourney Weaver, who's doing this voiceover bit, it's just sort of a strange but yet humorous choice. Why in the world they would have her do this? I think the joke would have been a little funnier if it was like someone like Bill Nye the Science Guy. Like, really think about that. Bill Nye the Science Guy doing voiceover for this aquarium would be interesting. But I guess, you know, joke being celebrity endorsement, or maybe I'm looking into it too much. Maybe Sigourney Weaver is just available for something. Though I will give some credit when we do see the Beluga's EPA vision, which almost reminds me of the scene in Alien with the little vent duct scene, the little 2 dots coming together and stuff. I don't know if that was intentional, but that was actually pretty funny. Other nitpicks, it does get a little intense in spots. If you're going to take little kids to see this movie, it's probably safe to see if they're okay with the first movie. If you show them the first film and they're okay with some of the intense material, they should be okay with it. There were at least a couple kids that were a little frightened at certain scenes, but it wasn't anything too violent or bloody. It was just the level of intensity, like near the very tail end, like, well, not really the tail end, more like in the middle of the 3rd act, there's this little dark turn that they toss in there, and I don't want to say it's unnecessary, because it does lead to, like, the uplifting revelation and stuff, but it's like, if you just remove that little dark spot, everything else would have been fine. Like, there wasn't really too much of a reason for that. There are points where it does get a little darker, especially in the opening where you see little baby Dory lost and trying to look for her folks in the big blue ocean. So I will give props. The reveal of where Dory originally lived is actually pretty well done, and they do like a little nice build-up and tension for that. But there are some scenes that I think kids are going to be a little upset about. Though the intensity, because I was telling my mother about it, and she was like, you know, if you were 5 or 6, you know, this movie would have really frightened you. I sort of disagree a little on that. I mean, I saw E.T. and I was okay. I saw Gremlins and Gremlins 2, the new batch, and I was like 6, and I was okay with that. So maybe it's like the way you were brought up, or the whole level of sensitivity you're at. There are some moments in here that are frightening, but I wouldn't really go as far as to say it's like eye-scarring or nightmarish per se. I'd probably say it's on the first level. I'd probably say it's on the same level as the first movie. There's nothing really too horrible or demented. It's just little spots here and there that could be a little uncomfortable, but not like too traumatizing or anything. And that's really the best way to sum up this movie. It's if you like the first one, you'll be okay with it. You'll be fine with it. It's definitely a blast. I remember seeing the first movie in the drive-ins and enjoying it. So for me, it wasn't really too much of a no-brainer. They definitely continue the story, even though there isn't much like a huge demand or feel to it. But to see them do a sequel and just really give it their all, and you know, actually do some good to it, it's nice to see that something like this exists. It's definitely a summer movie I can just recommend off the fly. So, yeah, I'd say check this out. Not really much else to say, except there's one minor thing I do have. So far this summer, I don't want to write it off as a bust. It's been a pretty quiet summer blockbuster season. Nothing really too big. So I'm a little curious and worried about what's coming up in the next 2 months or so. And even then, There was a couple of worries I do have, especially after seeing the trailer for Pete's Dragon, which I hope they do that movie right. I'm not like, I'm a little optimistic about it because I grew up on the original movie. I know it's not a perfect film. I'm just hoping that it changes my mind about it, because there's things in there I could be fine with. A little iffy on the dragon design. It looks too much like a flying pooch. But oh, Morgan, it's supposed to be a throwback to Falcor from the Neverending Story, blah blah blah. I get it. I don't know, there's just something that feels a little off with the dragon design. And then next came the trailer for Mona, even though it comes out Thanksgiving. It's weird because even before the movie started off, the wave of trailers had like a different variety of moods. Like with Pete's Dragon, it was like, it could be interesting, but I don't know. With Mona, it was like, could be okay, but I'm not that interested. And then the BFG comes on and it catches my attention. Just trailer-wise. Oh yeah, that reminds me, before I forget, stupid me, I almost forgot about it. There is an animated short they do attach this one called Piper, and it's a cute short. It's a really, really cute short. That's the best I can summarize with it. It deals with a little bird on the East Coast that's, being trained to hunt for its own food, and the rising conflict is just the rolling tide, which leads to some very funny, cute moments. So if you do see this movie, you'll get two great things for the price of one. It's not like Good Dinosaur or Inside Out, where both shorts were completely off, or Lava was just bleh, and Inside Out was yay, and the Super Sanjay superhero team was yay, and Good Dinosaur was aw. It's nice to have a short that relates to the tone and the theme of the movie that's being projected with. So if you go see this movie, you're gonna really love this short. It's cute is probably the best way to put it. I really got nothing much else to say. Other than that, that's just really my 2 cents, and I'll see you next week for Independence Day Resurrection. Toodles. Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, swimming, swimming.